businesses have all these variables and emotions and people. Property's like that simple process. Get a really good buyer's agent, right? And a really good advisor accountant in that space, and a broker. Those three critical trilogy pieces. If you get that as your team, you change the game. And again, I was on a podcast last week with a buyer's agent himself who knows how to do these mini markets really well. And he goes, I've gone from 0 to 4 properties in 6 months because I had he had himself, you had to pick the mini markets, which is we'll call it 70-80%. He had me in his corner, kicking him up the butt that he could get more money. And then he had the broker that got him the money.
This is why we call this strategic chess. It is constantly, and we call them strategic partners, right? There's constantly strategy going on. And when we talk about property, we talk about the buying process and the strategies behind it. And we talk about those key people, and you need them all to be strategic, because even your broker, like we've dealt with many brokers, and there's some that are very, very underdeveloped or not aware of some of the strategies, and some are really strategic. That doesn't mean they're being dodgy. It means they understand the bigger picture of whether it be structuring or lending or whatever it might be involved in that. So there's always a strategy there, but there's also a strategy then for your ongoing management of your portfolio. So you want to make sure that you're understanding the mini markets and how things have changed, or when to buy and when to sell, when to reinvest. So there's a strategy throughout this whole system.
All right, we're talking about property today with Lisa Baker and Ryan Fortitude. This is something that our whole business is really around property. Every time we have a meeting, it's like we are the specialists of property. We love property. We invest in property. But there's a lot of people that push property, and it's crap, and it's not great, and there's not a lot of purpose or why or reasoning behind it. And fortunately, over many decades, we've found the value of property, like how to buy property the right way, how to fund it the right way, how to get the right returns on property, how to leverage it, create portfolios, do property developments. Like, we're very for property as an advisory firm. So I'm keen today to talk with you about why do property? Like, why do property versus shares? Why do property versus term deposits? Why do property versus business? Why do property? Like, what's really the reason to do property? And then a little bit on how to do property right too, so that why is really there. And like I said before, I think a lot of people do property the wrong way. I think a lot of people do business the wrong way. Yeah. I think there is a right way to do property, and I think I've been fortunate enough to see it in my life, in your life, in clients' lives, and all the partners that we're associated with. It is a sure bet. It's a sure thing, and it's systemized. It's process driven. There's not heaps and heaps of variable to it, and it can make people financially free if they're aware on how to do it properly. So, Lise, why property?
Yeah, so I think you touched on it there, saying we've got to do it right. And I think that's what we're very passionate about. We do see it pushed a lot in the market, and I'm sure everybody hears about it, and you're probably hearing about it now thinking, oh, here we go again, pushing property. It is not a transactional thing. There is a system, right? We do know the system in how to do it well, how to always make wealth through property, but you do need the system, and you do need the right people. So we're going to talk more about that. The why behind it, there's a saying called property is a sure thing, business is the big thing, right? And I do believe in that. I think that the complexity with business, like running a business, owning a business, scaling a business, is so huge that you need to have such a wide array of skills and experience to do it well. It means that a lot of businesses unfortunately do fail, and we do see that because you need to be able to know everything from admin through to finance, through to marketing, through to sales, through to processes, through to systems. Like, you need to know a lot of things, or you have to be able to lead people who know a lot of things, or you have to be able to do both, right? So there's a lot involved in business. Property is easier. It's actually quite fulfilling and fun. So I think we all feel that emotional connection when you buy a house or you invest in your first home or you do a property development and you see it coming together and you get to share pictures with people or on your socials or you go to your auction and you sell it, or you go to an auction and you buy it. There's such an emotional connection with all the parts of property that it becomes fun, even though lots of parts of it are very stressful. Unless you have the right people in your corner, then it becomes less stressful. But there was a really great story that I heard the other day, actually, from a guy who had circa 300K in his super, and he was told to get a self-managed super fund, which he did. He was about 50 odd, 55 odd. And he said he went and did that. He followed the advice, he got the self-managed super fund, and he invested in a company. He did his due diligence. He had some people that advised him on that. They said, this company's really great. Invest all your money in that one. And within a couple of years, he'd lost it all. They'd sent his money offshore and it had gone into, administration. He can't get that money back now. And he's now working. He used to own a business. He used to have a lovely life. He's lost his house. He's lost everything because he's had to go back to grinding, essentially, in a job just to try build up some super again so that he can actually have some sort of retirement. And that was really sad. He was asking me for advice. And obviously we talked about a few different things. We do encourage people to invest in property. We don't encourage people to invest in business because property is a sure thing. We want people to invest where we know there's going to be a return. You talk really with strong conviction around the difference between property and the share market, because that's often a debate that we seem to have with people who come to us. Oh, I want to be in the share market. I want to invest in shares. Why property? Talk about that, because that's a really powerful part about the return.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Like, I agree with businesses. It's got so many variables. So many variables in business, and there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of things, and a lot of overwhelm. And that's why I think property answers a lot of questions when you're creating wealth, is that you don't have to deal with people or emotions or all those bits and pieces, and you can just do property. And if you do property in the right systemised way, which we'll go through today, you can create a lot of wealth without all the variables and all the uncontrollables. The reason for the stock market versus property is the stock market has a heap of variables, just like business does, because the stock market is businesses. So that's the big reason. Another reason is that post GFC 2008, you don't really borrow money or you don't take on debt to invest in the share market, because there were a lot of things called like margin calls, etc., which meant banks would lend you the money for a share portfolio. And then if the share portfolio went down, because business is crazy based on what I just said, what they'd do is they'd expect their money back on the debt. People couldn't repay it. So it's not a big thing to borrow money for shares anymore. So the problem is all shares can return is ultimately 10% on your money, because there's no gearing or there's no leverage or there's no debt. So simple example, if you had a share portfolio and you put $1 million in it, well, let's say 100 grand, put $100,000 in that share portfolio, it returns 10%, which is basic industry standard. It's 10 grand you made. If you put the same 100 grand into a property, say a 500K property, and the property is well purchased and returns 20%, you've 10x the share market, literally 10x the share market. You've made 100K on your 100K, not 10K. Therefore, you haven't been exposed to all the variability or the things that can go wrong in business and with companies, and you've got a 10x return. That's why, and I've done share portfolios for a very long time. It's why I edge towards property, because it's much more calculated, and because it's more calculated and systemized, you can safely borrow money if you follow the property process to make a lot of money and not expose yourself to those risks in business or in the stock market.
I actually saw a post the other day of a company promoting putting all of your borrowing, to invest in shares, right? I saw it just the other day, which I agree it shouldn't be promoted. What are some of the other biggest problems that you come across? Because you speak to people all day long. You meet with clients, you speak to strategic partners, you talk to them all day long about what their desires, what their clients desire, what their strategies are, what they're promoting or what they're desiring. What are some of the worst, or I guess ill-informed advice that you've heard of late?
Oh, there's heaps. There's heaps around property that's crap advice, and sometimes it's ignorant. Sometimes it's just unaware what people are doing. But there's a lot of property that's not well done. I had a conversation with a client yesterday who was just buying property for the sake of buying property, or just doing a renovation for the sake of doing a renovation, or just buying in a space for the sake of, there was no substance to it. And I said, we've got to stop doing that. We have no intention to make a return on investment, and we don't know what that market is doing. So there's no reason to do it. So that's a big thing that a lot of people are doing. And then the people that do get support by people like buyer's agents, some of those buyer's agents are very conservative. Some of them don't know the right markets. Some of them have conflicts and are selling their own product. Like, there is an immense amount of ways to buy property the wrong way. And therefore you don't get that 10x what the stock market is. You could buy lemons that make no money. I've seen a lot of people buy crap property. I've bought crap property myself. I speak openly and honestly about that. But luckily, in my awareness around property journey, 20 years in almost, I'm lucky that I'm pretty set and confident on how to make money on property. And believe it or not, it's not a very complicated process.
Yeah. And look, without going too much, because today we want to focus on the why property and we want to really hammer that message home, we will talk more about that system that we kind of apply, which is obviously starting with the right people and the right properties. Like, that is critical. The right structure, the right lending, which we'll touch on a bit, and the right people in your corner, I guess, to get that job done. How important is that little system there in this why piece?
Oh, you don't have the why if you don't have the system in property, and like a lot of people don't have the system, so they don't have the why in property. But the system is really simple, and if I broke it down to a really simple way to use the system, it would be that markets in Australia, so the property market in general across Australia, it goes up or it goes down, but there's always mini markets throughout Australia that have their moments at different times. And you or myself or a lot of people watching this, they don't have the skill set. They don't have the ability. They don't have anything to justify buying a property in a mini market, because there are, like business, a lot of variables.
Correct.
What mini market are you going for? What are the economics around it? What's the infrastructure? Is it undervalued or overvalued? There's a lot of pieces, but the simple system behind it is, if you get someone at the top of their game that doesn't have conflicts of interest and knows how to pick the mini markets throughout the larger market of Australia, then you've got a system to buy undervalued property, buy property that's going to grow, and to mandate that increase in wealth and to eliminate those variables, right? Business, there's just too many to eliminate.
Yeah.
There's too many. There's, like you said before, sales, marketing, admin, people, emotions, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But you can easily reduce the variables in buying good property by getting someone that knows how to pick the mini markets without a conflict. And then you're like 80% on your way to buying very good property that's got a very good return rate. And again, based on earlier numbers, would be a 10x the stock market. And in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, in more often than not, will grow better than a business.
Yep.
Because businesses have all these variables and emotions in people. Properties, like that simple process, get a really good buyer's agent, right? And a really good advisor accountant in that space. And a broker. Those three critical trilogy pieces. If you get that as your team, you change the game. And again, I was on a podcast last week with a buyer's agent himself who knows how to do these mini markets really well. And he goes, I've gone from 0 to 4 properties in 6 months because I had he had himself, you had to pick the mini markets, which is we'll call it 70-80%. He had me in his corner, kicking him up the butt that he could get more money. And then he had the broker that got him the money.
This is why we call this strategic chess. It is constantly, and we call them strategic partners, right? There's constantly strategy going on. And when we talk about property, we talk about the buying process and the strategies behind it. And we talk about those key people, and you need them all to be strategic, because even your broker, like we've dealt with many brokers, and there's some that are very, very underdeveloped or not aware of some of the strategies, and some are really strategic. That doesn't mean they're being dodgy. It means they understand the bigger picture of whether it be structuring or lending or whatever it might be involved in that. So there's always a strategy there, but there's also a strategy then for your ongoing management of your portfolio. So you want to make sure that you're understanding the mini markets and how things have changed, and when to buy and when to sell, when to reinvest. So there's a strategy throughout this whole system.
Yeah. It's those three key people, and they've got it. They, in its simplest piece, they've got to be property enthusiasts themselves, right?
Yep.
Because the accountant or advisor that loves property, right?
Yep.
He's been in the game.
Correct.
He's worked the plays. He's worked the strategy. The
Experience.
buyer's agent that has bought heaps of property for himself and knows the mini markets because he knows how the process works historically. He's the guy or she's the girl. And then the same with the broker. If you have a broker that's never bought property himself, has just bought homes for his clients, he doesn't know the property acquisition game. But if you've got a broker, right, that knows how to get portfolios, knows how to gear them the right way, has a portfolio himself, and as long as those three people can communicate in a round table way with the best interests and keep strategizing, but keep questioning what is possible, then you've got this crazy chance at real financial freedom and real wealth in a really good time frame.
Oh, beautifully said. That is perfectly said. And how many times do you hear people say, no, I've capped out. I can't now.
The buyer's agent said it to me. He's a legend, and he goes, I'm capped out. I said, bullshit. You're not capped out. I said, everyone's just so busy.
Yeah, that's exactly
I said, let's call it for what it is.
That's
I
right.
love doing the whole you can do what you can't do thing.
Yeah.
He got 4 properties like that.
Yes.
And he'll get another 4. Like, the point is, this is an easy process.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty set on what has to happen to remove all the variables, which I can't remove in business because it's just too many, right?
Yeah.
In the property piece, it's pretty simple. Get those 3 people, make sure they're property enthusiasts, make sure they're working with your best interest, and someone is taking responsibility for you to be able to keep acquiring. That's it.
And in the development game, obviously, that's hugely what we talk about too. We talk about, whether it's property investment, development, same, right? There's a lot of, but they're not the same. In terms of the principles and the practices, they're different. Something as an accounting firm or a financial strategist, how we like to talk about ourselves, because we're not necessarily your run-of-the-mill accountants. We do that work. But I think the big part about what we do in the development area is the feasibility piece, because I think that's a huge downfall of what we see when we get property developers who've come to us who've lost money, or we see people wanting to start a property development. The feasibility of the project piece is probably the biggest learning, and something they really can never fully wrap their head around. Some of the biggest developers we've got have gotten there to a very good level, but most struggle with the feasibility, and that is critical, right?
It's the same principle, though. It's the same principle whether you're developing or you're investing. Okay. It's the same principle that you need to have confidence around the ROI you're making, or the return on investment, or the growth rate. You need to know that. And most people, unfortunately, they piss in the wind, right? The investors go, like you said before, I want to buy the property with emotion, or I want to do it for that sake, or my mate's buying it, so I'm just going to go buy it. I've done this, right?
Someone told me it was a good
a good thing, and then I lost all my money, right? So they either do that on the investment side or on the development side. How many people come to us and they're doing a development for the sake of a development? They're doing a renovation for the sake of a renovation. I've done that as well, and I've made those mistakes. That if you don't have, again, on either side, a buyer's agent, for example, or someone that knows the mini markets or knows the deals within the mini markets, if you don't use that expertise and that professional, then you're off on the wrong foot from the start. Because you've just chosen something for the sake of doing it because it sounded cool. You got to have intent, and your intent's got to be, what's the ROI on this? And then your person's got to be, for example, a buyer's agent that's going to go and do the work for you. And they're going to charge you a fee, but that fee, it might be whatever it is, 20, 30K, but it might end up making the extra 500. That's way better than you saving the 30K and costing yourself 500. That's the biggest issue in property. Out of all my learnings is people doing it for the sake of doing it and not having a process. And that process is super simple. And that super simple process is just getting someone that's a gun
at what they do.
And paying them money to get you a cracker asset.
because it'll
And
make you
then
10 times more than what you
and
pay
you'll
'em.
be able to invest so much quicker on the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about those two people, just really quickly, we see two actually. We see the risk takers, the big risk takers, so the idealists who go, I'm just going to take risk because I know it's going to return for me, or someone told me it was great, and I heard this podcast, they said to invest in property. Then there's the people that say, oh no, what if it goes wrong and I lose all my money? So what we're talking about is coming in the middle here and taking calculated risk. So there's always a risk in any investment,
Oh,
right?
for sure.
Always. But it's calculated. And by following a system and having the right people and paying them the money that they deserve for their skills and their experience, you will get the return. Like, we haven't seen it go wrong. And when it has gone off path, you get them back on track. Like, we haven't seen it go bad. So that's why we talk about it with such conviction, because we constantly see the results of it. Do we see stress? Yes. Do we see it go off track? Yes. But there's normally always a solution, right?
There is, and I haven't seen many war stories,
No.
right, where it's gone astray. But the times I have, people just did it for the sake of doing it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I can speak like this because I've done it myself.
Yeah.
I've bought properties because they were a good property. I looked great, or I bought properties because it looked beautiful. Or I've bought properties I just bought them because it was a good idea. But there is a mechanic behind it.
Yeah.
And you can't control that mechanic, but someone else can.
Yep.
And that's the easiest way to keep this stuff simple.
Correct. And so these principles we talk about throughout this podcast, whether it be around business or profits, is probably the main thing I should say, profits, property, prosperity, all of it is underpinned by the fact that you're not meant to know everything. You're not meant to do this alone. You're meant to have the people, the advisors, know the systems behind all of this to make it work with what we're talking about. So I think you've just hit that nail on the head there with saying right people.
I said it to this lovely person I met yesterday, lovely client. She runs a business. This is a perfect story. Runs a really good business and has for a very long time. And it was a conversation around getting another business. And I said, I had to understand her motivations first on what she really wanted out of her life. But when it came down to it, she wanted freedom. She didn't want a business. And I then went, well, what do we do with the business money? What do we do with that? And it was, we invest it. But she didn't know how to invest it. And I said, well, I spoke to her and she's like, we could put some money here and we could put something. I'm like, I wouldn't do any of that. I'd use your money and I'd really deploy this principle. I'd take the pool of money and I would go and I'd get the person and I'll help with the whole, the finance, the mindset and the finance of bringing the people together. And then you've got a calculated process to take your business money that has a lot of variables and then in a calculated way, continue to compound that, ideally to the point in 5 years where you've doubled your position. Yeah. You've doubled your wealth in a calculated manner. And the excitement and the release that she's like, wow, I've actually got a way to make more wealth without all the variables. There was a peace. There was an ease. She gets to do exactly what she wants to do. Yeah. But up until that point, she'd sold herself into the business life because that's all she knew.
Yeah, powerful. And we'll talk more about prosperity, but that's the real reason for all these things we talk about. That's the real reason for the triangle, the piece, because usually when you dig beneath the surface, people just want freedom. People want some sort of understanding or knowledge, or they feel good about the fact that I know my future's going to be good. I know I'm going to have some time with my family. I know I'm going to be able to live the life I've wanted to live. And that's why we're so passionate about what we do. I've never met anyone more passionate about property than you. So your last bit of gold, why property?
Because it's worked for me. That's the answer, right? If I lost obviously we own the business and we run strategic and it's amazing. It's got lots of work that we're always doing on it. But if I had to put it down to something that I believe in that gives me and my family security and that I know is always going to be there for us, I would put my cards on property. And I love you and I love what you do and I believe in you. I believe in you more than anyone and what we've achieved, but it's still got so much to it. And I want freedom and I want financial freedom. And I believe there is a calculated process with property and it just keeps getting better and better. Property just keeps accumulating. It gives peace. It's not just about financial freedom. It's about peace that if you do it with this process, it just keeps growing. That equity keeps growing. That wealth keeps growing. That safeguard, that lack of scarcity, that abundance keeps growing. And that's an energy of financial freedom that gives you peace, gives you presence with your family and everybody else. And again, it's controllable. It's just controllable based on some very simple principles that we've put down today.
Yeah.